October 27, 1962. The world held its breath as the sun rose over Washington, Moscow, and Havana. For 13 days, the Cuban Missile Crisis had edged humanity toward the abyss. But on this morning, one wrong word, one twitch of a trigger finger, would ignite a war unlike any in history. In our reality, restraint prevailed. But imagine a single message delayed, a single submarine captain giving the order to launch. At 10 a.m., as President Kennedy sat in the Oval Office debating letters from Khrushchev, a Soviet officer in Cuba, convinced that war had already begun, authorizes the firing of a surface-to-air missile. In an instant, an American U-2 reconnaissance plane is torn from the sky, the pilot killed. The signal is unmistakable. Blood has been spilled.
The Pentagon erupts. Phones ring with a fury that drowns out thought. Generals demand action. By noon, American bombers lift off from Florida, streaking toward Cuba with orders to obliterate the missile sites before they can launch. The skies above the Caribbean darken with contrails, and Cuban soldiers, their hands trembling, prepare for an attack they cannot stop. Soviet advisors on the ground relay frantic calls to Moscow. The Americans are coming. In the Kremlin, Khrushchev's aides warned that to do nothing would be political suicide, proof of weakness. The decision is made. Soviet anti-air batteries roar to life, and within minutes, American planes are falling in flames over Havana. The line has been crossed.
At 2 p.m., Kennedy receives the news. The weight of the world seems to crush his shoulders as advisors argue over options. Some plead for restraint, others for invasion. But when reports arrive that Soviet troops in Cuba have launched short-range missiles against the U.S. naval base at Guantanamo, killing hundreds, hesitation ends. Kennedy signs the order. Operation Scabbards, the planned invasion of Cuba, is unleashed. Thousands of Marines storm the beaches under the cover of battleship guns while paratroopers drop into cane fields already ablaze. Cuban and Soviet defenders fight savagely, but the island begins to fall in fire and ash.
In Moscow, Khrushchev listens in silence as his commanders describe the collapse of Cuba. Rage boils into fear. To save face and protect Soviet honor, they argue, the next step must be taken. At 8 p.m., nuclear-capable bombers lift off from bases in Eastern Europe, their targets marked across West Germany, Italy, and Britain. NATO radars detect them, alarms wail through command bunkers, and American forces respond. The skies above Europe ignite in dogfights lit by tracer fire, while missiles streak toward cities that had gone to bed expecting peace. By midnight, Warsaw Pact forces surge through the Fulda Gap into West Germany, tanks grinding forward beneath artillery flashes that turn night into day. World War III has begun.
The oceans too become battlegrounds. Soviet submarines stalk American carriers, their torpedoes darting like sharks through the depths. Off the coast of Norway, a U.S. destroyer detects a submarine and drops depth charges. What follows is silence, then a blinding flash beneath the waves. The Soviets have fired a nuclear torpedo. The destroyer vanishes in a column of fire, and with it, the last illusion that this war will remain conventional.
At 2 a.m. in Washington, Kennedy faces the decision every leader dreads. American cities are within reach of Soviet missiles. Europe burns. Generals urge a strike on Moscow before the Soviets strike first. The president hesitates. But when word comes that a nuclear warhead has detonated on a NATO airfield in Turkey, his hand trembles no longer. Orders are given. Minutes later, missiles streak skyward from silos buried deep in the American Midwest, their engines painting fiery trails into the night. Across the world, Soviet silos open in response, their rockets climbing towards the stars. Before dawn, the first American warheads detonate over Soviet air bases. Entire squadrons vanish in fireballs that rise higher than mountains. In retaliation, Moscow's missiles slam into New York, Washington, and Chicago.
The eastern seaboard becomes a horizon of flames, millions of lives extinguished in seconds. London, Paris, and Bonn follow, reduced to rubble beneath mushroom clouds. Across the Pacific, Vladivostok and Beijing burn as American warheads rain down. Humanity, in a span of hours, has unleashed more destructive power than all the wars of history combined.
And yet, even in the ashes, fighting continues. In the ruins of Berlin, soldiers claw at rubble with rifles in their hands, still obeying orders given by voices long vaporized. Jets scream over skies poisoned with fallout, and submarines trade nuclear fire beneath oceans turned graveyards. By the second day, communications collapse, governments vanish, and survivors huddle in basements, staring at skies that glow with an eerie red haze.
This is the world that could have been. The world that waited just one heartbeat away in October 1962. A war not of months or years, but of hours, where nations ceased to exist before their leaders could understand what had begun. History remembers the Cuban Missile Crisis as the closest we came to nuclear Armageddon. But in the silence of that autumn, balanced on a knife's edge, one delayed message, one misunderstood order could have tipped humanity into the abyss. And had World War III begun in 1962, the story of our world would have ended before it was ever written.